I'd like to introduce Dr. Kim Liu now. She's been a member of Citizen Climate Lobby for over 3 years, I think. She's a very active member and she uses her time really well. She has a good network around Sydney and uses it very effectively to reach out to members of Parliament and other people of influence. She's also a very active member of Doctors for Environment, and I love the way that she's been able to blend the two different organisations, her membership of the two different organisations, and I think she's probably a member of a couple of others as well that are relevant. So I'd love to introduce Kim now. She'll be speaking to us for about 20 minutes, and there will be time for questions afterwards. So I'll unmute you, Kim.
Thank you. Hi, I kind of quickly cobbled together a few photos because with very few words. I'm going to share the screen now. See if this works. Share. Can you see that?
It's coming up.
Yeah.
Yes, there it is. Yep.
Okay. So this is a slide that pretty much sums up my whole life at the moment. So I've been a doctor now for 30 years. I went to Sydney University and I have an interest in palliative care and children and obstetrics and gynecology. I've had postgraduate training in that. I've got 2 children that you can see there. That's Alex and Sydney. Alex is an active member of AYCC and he's in Canberra right now, and he's going to be lobbying this week. And Sydney, who's 14, is joining AYCC and she's going to do the climate leadership course with AYCC. Now, my work is Riverstone Family Medical Practice. I'm pretty much there stupid hours for about $40 to $50, not 40 to 50 hours per week. And it's renewable. You can see the solar panels on the roof of the practice. So with Citizens Climate Lobby, I'm a group leader and a mentor. Within Doctors for the Environment, I'm in 3 steering committees, the Federal Steering Committee, and I'm the organiser for politician visits. Plus, I'm in the steering committee for our current campaign, No Time for Games. And with the Australian Medical Association, I'm also seeing politicians with them in the marginal seats. And I'm just going to give you a quick squiz at what I've done in the past week. On Thursday night, I went to a meeting with Dr. John van der Kalen, who's our chair in DEA, with Helen Redmond, who's our divestment officer, with Karen Phelps, and with Tim Buckley and John Hewson. And last week, I initiated my son, you can't quite see in this slide, I'll wait to there. I initiated my son into political activism and took him to see our local Labor member, David Elliott, who's the Minister for Counterintelligence, Veterans and Jails, and who very promptly said to me and my son that in his personal experience, he didn't believe it was getting hotter. And I was thinking, Alex, please don't roll your eyes at this point in time. And so I just thought I'd talk to you a little bit about my childhood influences to bring me where I am currently. My childhood was during the 70s, and what I remember was all the pollution. I grew up in Liverpool, and Liverpool still currently has the had a high pollution level for a very long time, since my childhood in the 70s to now. And I remember distinctly my mum driving across the Georges River and the blue-green algae. At home, it was a bit of an oasis. I had, my parents grew fruits and vegetables, and we had tons of bees in the garden. And we had the ubiquitous concrete incinerator at the corner of the yard. Even though my parents constantly told us to save water and turn off the lights and save electricity, we still burnt things in the incinerator. I remember one day when my father burnt my cat, whose name is Smokies, litter in the incinerator and basically stunk out the whole of our suburb. And so when I was a child, I could see that really the pollution wasn't the right thing to happen. Even if you go to Liverpool now, you can smell the smog.
Wow.
Yeah. And then this is Wagga Wagga, where I went to high school. And I put a carp there because one of my distinct memories of Wagga was that we used to fish for carp in the Murrumbidgee River with snowballs. But Wagga also has a distinction of being one of the most polluted areas in the country, North Wagga Wagga. If you look at the current emissions, the current EPA emissions, live emissions, and it was also it has had thunderstorm asthma, the only place in New South Wales last year. So when I was, so the point where I became sort of active at home was actually reducing my carbon footprint at home. And so these are pictures of how I've insulated my backyard, and so I've insulated the whole house and then installed all the measures I could to actually reduce my usage of power and water at home. And people, please interrupt me at any point in this, okay? And then my influences when I was growing up, and I've got Anthony Green here because I feel that Anthony Green has actually influenced my life. Since 1991, when he came on and commented on the New South Wales election, I've watched every single election that he's commented on. And my parents are long-time Labor supporters. And so we had a lot of political talk at home around the table. And my parents used to go out to a lot of protest march with the refugees and Aboriginal rights in the 70s. And I feel that that has influenced me as well. And really, before I became politically active in the past 3 to 4 years, these are all the things that have influenced me. The very obvious graph of how average temperatures are causing extreme weather. I discovered Renew Economy, where I found the live electricity generation site, which I was horrified with because currently 80% of our energy is still from black coal in New South Wales. Once I actually had a lower power bill with all the technology I actually had at home, I actually became active contacting our local council and then subsequently being in several pieces of, I've written for Fairfax and Open Forum and the Women's Agenda. And I was also on national television on Channel 7 talking about my renewable energy and my power bill at home. And around the time that this happened, I found CCL because my longtime friend Dashini's uncle, Howard, actually belonged to CCL. So she convinced me after about 2 talks to join Citizens Climate Lobby. So soon after Citizens Climate Lobby, I joined Doctors for the Environment. And Citizens Climate Lobby, I feel, is primarily the reason where I am now, because it's actually given me the skills to lobby politicians. And that skill has been transferable to every other group I've joined. So I am the main coordinator of political visits, and this is a smattering of people we've seen. So we have seen this is Doctors for the Environment, plus in the corner here, I've added this in, is CCL seeing Kevin Andrews, the initiator of the Monash Group. And I have been, during the Wentworth by-election, I realised that was a crucial election. I haunted Wentworth about 3 or 4 days of my time and took time off work for it.
Great.
And here's me with pretty much the main candidates. So it was actually difficult getting an appointment with any of the candidates besides Karen Phelps. So I walked into Dave Sharma when I exited Edgecliff Station, and he was standing by himself, which was a golden opportunity. So I engaged him to talk about climate and health and the health of children until he was pulled away by a minder. But before he was pulled away, I managed to get a photo. And then I went to pre-polling and met Dominic and Tim. And this is our meeting Karen Phelps. And this is polling day, and this is one of my favourite photos. I need to move that photo. And that's my friend, who's another member of Doctors for the Environment, who was actually handing things out for the Greens, and me for Karen Phelps. And this is another blended meeting with Doctors for the Environment and Citizens Climate Lobby. It's the start of our campaign for No Time for Games, which I can talk about later. And besides lobbying politicians, we've also managed to meet other significant people using the skills from CCL. So this is Terry Ann Johnson, who's the Director of Clean Up Australia. And this is Jennifer Newells, who's one of the Senior Directors of the Australian Museum.
I think we're still on a previous slide, actually. Oh, that's, yep.
Yep, there. Got it?
Yeah, got it now, yep.
Yep. Sorry I'm racing through this because I don't want this to be boring, so I'll race. I'll go through quickly.
It's well paced, thank you. It's well paced.
Okay. And this is Doctors for the Environment at the Labour Conference, which was fascinating. So they actually had a stall for a very large room with anyone who pretty much wanted to join the Labour conference within, what would they call it? They actually, I've forgotten what they call it. Basically, we had a lot of lobby groups within the area that we were in, and we could go. It was called the Fringe. So we could actually freely go to the Fringe Festival within Labor. So there were, within Labor itself, it was interesting because they had a lot of internal lobby groups. Like Lean's actually very powerful within Labor now, and also Labor for Refugees. So the way that Labor was actually reaching out to its grassroots was having all these tiny groups of lobbyists within Labor itself. So that was fascinating. I'm not a member of any political party, but when I was there, I thought, well, you know, I felt very Labor. It was the Labor that was actually in the Fringe. I didn't actually go to the main conference, so it was fascinating. And this is No Time for Games, which is our current campaign through Doctors for the Environment to protect children in a changing climate. And this is me and Karen Phelps last week when I went on a Bondi to Bronte walk to talk to her electorate. So this is actually a very quick summary of what I've done in the past 3 years. So really, what has motivated me every single day to actually continue lobbying is because I see climate change every single day affecting and impacting my patients.